Hey, you biscuits. How is your gorgeous summer going? Are you luxuriating in postpartum bliss? Are you running around with big kids that have constant schedules that are changing and you're thinking, oh my god, when will I ever get to relax? Or are you a childless mom-to-be and you're thinking, oh, my last summer of freedom before kids? So I want to talk about postpartum sanity savers. So my daughter is now 17 months? Yes, I think she's 17 months. She could be 16. I have to do math on that. She's not quite a year and a half old yet. And so we're in like the toddler phase now is kicking in. And just kind of recently I know technically like at a year they hit a toddler, but I feel like my kids wait a little bit longer to be toddlers. She's been walking for ages, but she's really gotten like the tantrums and the personality has come out recently. We're in full toddler phase. But it brought me back to last spring and last summer when I was in that postpartum kind of haze of what were things that really saved my sanity. And I kind of feel like when you're in it, it's hard to talk about sometimes because you're so experiencing it. You're like, oh, what should I do? I don't know. So last summer and spring, what I found really helpful, so I have my almost year and a half year old and I have a 7-year-old. So there's, 6 years between them. And when I was in that postpartum period with a new little baby, my kid, my 6-year-old at the time, needed attention, right? And focus, and that was really hard to give. So what I found was great was sideline in bed to nurse, or just cuddle baby, and then bringing in crafting supplies to the bed so that we could all sit there and kind of make it a fun space. So instead of trying to stick baby on the older kid's schedule, or instead of trying to kind of force my postpartum recovery to shorten so that I could be in Abraham's space, in my son's space, instead I kind of brought him into the little postpartum bubble so he felt a part of it, right? He was there, he could cuddle the baby, he could cuddle mama, and we could do crafts together. And that's going to really depend on the age of your kid. My son really likes to do construction paper crafts, tape things together, make little soft things, but he's not yet in like making really complex things yet. So that really works well. I think it works best if your kids are younger. Like probably my son is at the older edge of being able to be entertained by that. But it allowed him, and this works for however many kids you have, allowed, my older kid to come in and be a part of the postpartum period, which was really important, but on his terms. So he was having fun, he was being played with and engaged with by me, so that he didn't have that built up resentment or loneliness that can really come. I have 4 siblings, so I remember that period where you're adjusting to being a different number in the family and a different level of importance because babies take so much focus. So that was the sanity saver, is bringing other kids, older kids, into the postpartum bubble with me on their terms, but in a way that allowed me to still bond with baby, to relax, to rest a little bit. That can be an absolute sanity saver. And probably the second thing on this list, which is one of the things that I struggled with the most, which is so silly. It was like, self-flagellation, right? Let me hit myself with a stick, give myself more things to do. But I managed not to, is really planning out food and letting things go. Like, we ate so much prepackaged Costco food and frozen food during my postpartum period with my daughter. So much. And when I had my son, I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make all this food. And I mean, literally, I remember standing there with like a piece of bread in my hand and a screaming baby and a pickle and going, oh my god, I can't even make food. It was so foolish to do. So the second time around, I really approached it as, what kind of meal prep can I do? Can I buy? Not even do. What kind of meal prep can I just buy? I found that one pot meals were like my staple. In fact, I had a friend at some point tell me, because I was talking about recipes, and they're like, is this one of your one pot things? And I thought about it and went, oh yeah, have I been making a lot of those lately? And they were like, yes you have. So anything that you can make in one pot, sheet pan dinners, frozen food, and pre-made meals are like a godsend. And right now with inflation, those are expensive. I really noticed how much more my grocery budget was when I was buying pre-made and frozen. I so frequently make so much from scratch that it was hard for my brain to wrap around. So if you're being budget conscious, I would say the cookie sheet or one pot on the stovetop meals are going to be a much more affordable way to do that. But really, like, try to budget in just getting pre-made or frozen food for a while, for that little short window of postpartum, so that you can just focus on baby, you know? We did all paper plates and disposable utensils when she was really tiny, like the first couple months, because I said, you know what? I'm just not going to be able to keep up with it all. There's no way. You know, I was taking care of the baby. I was still working, still homeschooling my son. And then in the postpartum period, so I was like, you know, you just got to drop some balls and trust they will be there to pick back up, to juggle when your postpartum period kind of finishes and you kind of come out and go, oh my, the world looks a little different. Which is maybe another third thing, is realizing and accepting beforehand that when you come out of that postpartum bubble, and whether it's your first, your third, or your seventh kid, you know, however long into motherhood you are a little bit changed. And I think that that's something that I've always had a little struggle is not the right word with, but it's definitely made me do a double take, because you are a little bit different. And for me, I kind of long for that postpartum thing, and also go like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I can sleep now, because it's such a special little bubble time. And, you know, giving birth and welcoming a new child into your family does change your spirit and your outlook and your personality a little bit. So giving yourself grace with the understanding that you aren't who you were before going into that little postpartum bubble, right? And that's good, that's a beautiful thing, but also like having the ceremony or the sense of self to really embrace that and not be shocked or horrified or saddened by the fact that, you know, life changes us, right? And I don't mean that in like physical postpartum body. People talk about postpartum bodies all the time. It's like all everybody's obsessed with. I mean, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, right? It's like we shift, we grow, we expand in these beautiful ways. And there isn't a lot of talk, I feel, about that in just average, everyday postpartum tips. You know, I'll see a lot of make yourself a padsicle and make sure you get a shower once a weekend kind of tips. And I'm like, those are great. Those are absolutely true. Totally great. But what are you doing in the postpartum bubble to embrace the new you and to celebrate the new you, the birth of the new you? How cool is that? Every time you have a kid, you give birth to a person and then kind of a rebirth of yourself. That's pretty neat. As the kids would say, it's pretty dope. No, they don't say dope anymore. Well, my little brother teaches me the lingo. I have no idea. I don't pay attention. Yes, what's the youngest generation? That's a good question. So what are my kids' generation? So Gen Z are like 20-year-olds, right? 15-year-olds maybe? But what are the younger kids? I have no idea. But these are all things that have really helped with, like, as I looked back this summer, because I was kind of reminiscing going, oh yeah, my baby's not a baby anymore. What was helping me in the postpartum period? Go easy on yourself. Ask for help. Be forgiving, be accepting of yourself and your baby and your family and the shifts and the dynamics that are at play when you're in that postpartum bubble. It never hurts to be kind to yourself and your family. And I think between hormones and sleep deprivation and your body is sore and you're adjusting to all this stuff, it can be really hard to give yourself grace and kindness. And then to, especially when we are just pouring from an empty cup, right? We're giving all our grace and kindness to everybody around us, and then it comes to us and we're just depleted. So give yourself that space, whether you're in the postpartum bubble, you're going into it, or you're looking back on it and thinking, oh, did I lose my chance to do that? Never. There's never a point where you can't revisit that emotionally, you know, and kind of take care of yourself, tend to yourself. That's so much of what I talk about self-care on my Patreon page, is because self-care has so many layers. It's not just having scented candles and taking a long shower, right? Self-care is your emotional, your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your home's well-being, right? Like, and how that all plays in to your life. And in this case, your postpartum life. Okay, biscuits. I will prattle on for quite an extended period of time about postpartum topics. I don't do a whole ton of parenting topics on here anymore. And I think I've talked about that in other videos why. But this was on my mind and I thought I would share it because I feel like it's important that we share that and communicate it with each other instead of just kind of, you know, the hush-hush of like, what is that postpartum bubble and how can you tend to yourself and your family and then like never share that information, because is it too much of a look into our souls, right? That it is a big change and a big shift, and what can we do? Like, why aren't we perfect Pinterest moms all the time? I'm like, I'm sure perfect Pinterest moms exist, but I have the feeling they're just as neurotic as I am. They're just better at hiding. So I will see you over on Instagram. Don't forget to follow along in there because I post a ton of fun reels. Oh, biscuits, will you tell me in the comments, or you can pop over to Instagram and tell me there. I would love to know, what topics on reels would you like there? So on Instagram, I talk a lot about, you know, inner child journeys and self-care and emotional well-being and fun stuff like that, and it's very aesthetic, and I do lots of, like, you know, little cottagecore reels and stuff. But I really want to hear from you. What would you like to hear on there? Because it's hard to know which ones connect the most, and I would love to know what you would like to see on there. What would make your feed happier that I could post? Okay, see you in the next video. Bye, biscuits.